an attorney from Atlantic City area. Seth Grossman has been a gadfly, an elected member of the Atlantic City Freeholders Board. He has started one of the first organizations that was grassroots organizations well before the Tea Party ever had its birth. Seth Grossman put together a group called Liberty and Prosperity in 2003. They have been at the front of the battle for individual rights, and Seth Grossman is running for governor of New Jersey. I would please like to give a round and warm round of applause to Seth Grossman.
Thank you very much. When I was on the 101.5 radio talking to Jim Gerhardt, he said, how can you possibly think about running against Chris Christie? He's so popular. And I said, well, if Chris Christie was so popular, I would have gotten 1,300 signatures in less than 3 weeks to be on the ballot to run against him. And let's talk about why I'm running and why it's so important for you to help me, and not just me, but the others. I'm running on the ticket with the Republicans for BurlCo, together with Joe SIANO and Connie Murray in the 7th Legislative District, with Scott Fay and Gary Jakes in the 8th, which also, by the way, includes Hamilton in Atlantic County. But I'm not going to call him Gary Jakes, I'm going to call him Gary JACQUES, like in Frere Jacques, because that's how he spells his name, that's how you're going to find it on the ballot. I'm also running with Lance Silver and Bill Moore, and of course with Bill HANEY and Ashley Cameron for Republican State Committee. Now, why is this so important? This is so important because we had the fellow from the 10th Amendment Society, I see him over there, he said, who works for who? Those folks in the government, they work for us, don't they? Well, of course that's not true, because April 15th, tomorrow, is when most of us will be putting in the mail the money that we earned in the last 3.5 months to pay them. So if they work for us, why are they forcing us to work 3.5 months for them? And how come they are getting 2% pay hikes every year? And why are they getting the health benefits? And why are they getting the pensions? Why are they retiring at age 55, making more money than most of us earn working if they work for us? The sad fact is we work for them. The public servants are our masters. And how did this happen? It happens because they have political power and we don't. Because while we're out working, many of them have their government jobs, their nonprofit government agencies. They are out paying attention to politics. They are out paying attention to elections, and we are taking care of our businesses, our jobs, and our families. We wake up and we turn around and we're told that the 3.5 months it takes us to pay our federal taxes isn't enough. That we have to work a little bit harder, we have to sacrifice harder. And the harder we work, the more they demand of us. Now, when the Tea Party started, it started on April 15th, 2009. Right, that was 4 years ago. And we all rallied and talked about how the Boston Tea Party was against paying taxes without representation. But where are we 4 years later? Why is there just a handful of us here? Well, the sad fact is that 49% of Americans don't pay any income tax, and April 15th means nothing to them. That for many people, April 15th is when you get your welfare payment that they call a tax credit, which really isn't a tax credit if you don't pay any taxes. And then there's another 10 or 20% who work for the government or in one way or another, get more money back from the government than they pay in taxes. So what we have is we have about 30 to 40% of us suckers working to pay the taxes. We're the makers. And then we have about 60 to 70% are the takers. So when we talk about having a fair tax, to the takers, it's a very fair tax right now, isn't it? Where every April 15th, a bunch of suckers go pay a lot of money so you could get something for nothing based on someone else's labor. That's the system we have now. And how can we change it? There's only one way to change it, and that's to have power, and that's to have respect. And if you go through 5,000 years of recorded history, how is it that you get power? How is it that you get respect? You could read about it in the Bible. You could read about it from a guy called Machiavelli. But probably the easiest way to learn about it is to see a movie called The Godfather or Goodfellas. How do you get respect? You have to whack somebody, right? Then you're a made man, and then you get respect. But until you're a made man, you have no respect whatsoever. And that's where we are right now. And I admire the folks from the Tea Party so far, teaching us about our history, about our Constitution, about the fair tax, about the 10th Amendment. But unless we get respect, our ideas and we ourselves will be ignored, ridiculed, forgotten, and marginalized. The only way we could change things is to whack somebody, and thank God we have elections still in this country. We could do it legally, we could do it with our Constitution, we could do it by voting. So how can we do that? Well, that's why I'm running for governor of New Jersey. Not only to say I want to run against Christie, because when I hear Chris Christie talk about, his town hall meetings, how he's cut spending, how he's lowered taxes, how he saved the pension system, I asked myself, how can you cut spending if Christie's budget is 17% higher than Corzine's last budget? How can you say taxes are down if taxes are up? How can you say you saved the pension plan if the pensions are more insolvent now than they were when Corzine was governor? And how can you say the economy is coming back is every time I drive on Route 206, I see more empty, vacant buildings and for sale signs and for rent signs than I did the last time I drove up Route 206. Because it's all lies, because we're continuing the same policy of more government, more taxes, more spending, more borrowing that is grinding us down. So the first thing we have to say is, what is it that we have to do now to turn things around? And the answer lies really in our New Jersey Constitution. We all know about the 10th Amendment and the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, but New Jersey Constitution actually saved America from the first economic collapse we had. Some call the Panic of 1837, where the state governments became heavily in debt, where the state governments became heavily corrupt, where you couldn't own a business unless you paid off some politician. So in 1844, New Jersey came up with a new constitution that changed everything. It had two main provisions. Number one, that the state could not borrow money without voter approval. That's called Article 8, Section 2 of our Constitution. The second key element of our state constitution, all laws had to treat everybody equally. And we wandered away from that. When everyone's treated equally, then you don't need lobbyists or politicians to get a special favor. And if a law is unjust, it's unjust for the rich and powerful, and they want to get it changed. If you have an unjust law and make loopholes for the rich and powerful, they get out of it, and the rest of our schnooks have to follow it. I thought it was very interesting when Chris Christie said, I cut taxes $2.5 billion for the job creators. Well, who the hell are the job creators? Well, one of them was called the Revel Casino. You build a casino that goes broke 3 months later, yeah, I created jobs. For Steve Sweeney's construction worker union guys who got worked for 8 months, then collect unemployment for 2 years that we have to pay for. That's a great system. So what do we have to do? Number one, we must immediately repudiate all unconstitutional debt. You ever wonder why the roads of New Jersey are so shabby? Potholes, everything's falling apart, no money for new roads or bridges. You drive down Route 322, go to Wildwood, 55 never got finished after 20 years, no money. Well, it turns out we have, every time you fill up your car with gas, you pay a 14-cent a gallon tax. What happens to that money? It's all going to be repay Wall Street for money that was borrowed 10 years ago without a vote of the people. If we repudiate the debt, every nickel of our gasoline tax would fix up our roads. We have our kids are in college with these huge student loans paying $25,000 a year for college tuition. When I went to school, a student could earn enough in a summer to pay for a year's tuition. Healthcare was affordable. When people paid the doctor out of their own pocket, my dad charged $2, and of course doctors and dentists lived upstairs from their offices. A different world back then, but when somebody else is paying, nobody cares what the cost is. So what we've got to do is get back to repudiate the unconstitutional debt, equal payment, equal treatment of taxes and all laws, zoning laws for everybody, and we've got to stop using the government to steal. When the 10 Commandments say you shall not steal, it means if I go in your house and take a $500 TV set, I'm a criminal. I'm stealing from you. But if I vote for a politician who gives you a $500 stimulus tax credit paid for by my money, isn't that the same as stealing? If I vote for someone that's taken from somebody else, it is. So we have to think about, why is government so expensive? Because government is set up to be the referee, to enforce the rules equally for everybody. Whenever government is used to take from one person to give to somebody else, it's stealing. So if government stops stealing, government gets very simple, it gets very honest very quickly. But again, these are good ideas, and the Tea Party groups have good ideas, and the fair tax people have good ideas, and the 10th Amendment guys, they got good ideas. But again, how are we going to get people to respect us? We've got to win an election. Now, how do we win an election? Well, if we run on a third party or a fourth party or a fifth party and get 2% of the vote in November, we are proving absolutely nothing. But there's a very important election coming up in just about 7 weeks, June 4th. It's the Republican primary election. And you don't have to be a Republican to vote in that election. 95% of all voters are eligible. If you're a Republican, that's fine. If you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, it means you never voted in a primary election, and under New Jersey state law, you are legally qualified to vote. Now, one thing about primary elections, hardly anybody votes in them. Only 5% of the people vote, which means you have 20 times the voting power in June than you have in November. And if you vote in that primary election, and if you vote for me, Seth Grossman, for governor, and Joe CIANO, and Connie Murray for assembly, and Scott Fay and Gary Jakes for assembly in the 8th district, and Lance Silver for freeholder, Bill Moore for sheriff, Bill Haney and Ashley Cameron for county committee, you'll find out that just you and your family and getting involved, putting up the signs, you can actually win that election for us. And we will, and even those who don't win will come pretty darn close, and that will shake up the establishment and give us the respect we have been looking for the past 4 years. Now people are saying, how can you run against Christie? He has $2 million in his campaign fund. You only have a few $1,000s. But I'll tell you what, you see, Chris Christie will spend his millions of dollars to stuff your mailbox with his campaign stuff and to have TV ads and stuff around. But we have weapons also. In the next week or two, we're going to start having campaign signs. I'd like to see them on your lawn. I would like to see you go to my website, grossman4nj.com. And I see we have some folks. I see we have Bruce Barkoff, and we have Mark Hutchinson, have my literature. I hope they'll be handing it out later on. But even then there's something even more important. You go to the website, we have weapons we did not have years ago. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have LinkedIn, we have email, we have all sorts of ways. You could write letters to the editor. You could go to the online version of your local newspaper. You could comment on every story and start mentioning those names. Seth Grossman, Joe CIANO, Connie Murray, Scott Fay, Gary Jakes. You start doing that, and suddenly some reporters are going to start asking questions, and they'll start putting us on the radar screen. So we can change history, but only if we realize it's time for us to stop talking to each other. It's time to stop going to meetings and thinking we have done our jobs. We talk to 10 people who agree with us, and then we go home. We've got to talk to our kids. We've got to talk to our co-workers. It reminds me of what Martin Luther said about Christians. He said, every Christian must be a missionary, and every Tea Party conservative must also be a missionary. And we get a report card on June 4th. What will happen? Will I be just one of those fringe gadfly candidates who ends up with 1,800 or 3,000 votes on June 4th? Or will you help me reach a threshold of 50 or 60 or 100,000 votes so people would say, gee, if this guy had money, he could have made it. We want to be like Mickey Mantle. Remember he said, if I knew I'd live this long, I'd take care of myself? Something like that. So we want to say, gee, this Grossman, this Tea Party, they really got political power. When they get really their act together next year, they could really do some damage. But it's not going to happen if we don't start now. And now is now. Grossman4NJ.com. The election that counts, the primary election, June 4th, 6.5 weeks away. Thank you very much. And by the way, I got to thank one thing is Paul and Pat Pfeiffer here. Paul, okay. I just want to thank the people who really put me on the ballot, the people who got me the 1,300 signatures, and Paul and Pat Pfeiffer got me 55 signatures from right here in Medford, and I'm very grateful to them for putting me on the ballot, along with Peter and Catherine Boyce, who got me 55 signatures at the Fairton Christian Center in Cumberland County. Thank you very much.
Seth Grossman for governor.